Today we're talking 5 underrated bourbons for whatever reason. Let's chat about that today on the My Bourbon Journey Whiskey Review channel. Let's do this.
You just burning it all down. Take it all, it's never enough. Wicked ways, you know how to play it, don't you?
Hey guys, and welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me today. So as you'll see, I'm hitting you with not even a bourbon right out of the gate. This is the Michter's American Whiskey. Now, what kind of qualifies this as an American whiskey is the mash bill is not quite 51%. It's already excluding it from being a bourbon just based on the amount of corn within this mash bill. Now, for me, this is a whiskey that doesn't nearly get talked about enough. Really easy sipping, again, at right around that 83.4 proof, and oftentimes Michter's stuff is on the lower proof side of things. But for me, it's one of those brands that seems to retain a lot of its flavors at a lower proof. Not exactly sure how or why that is, but for me, again, the Michter's American Whiskey is just one of those underrated bourbons, and at right around that $40 price point, give or take, I think it's a really nice American whiskey. Again, not quite a bourbon, but I wanted to get this in there because it's just something that doesn't get talked about nearly enough, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that it is lower proof, and a lot of us, within the whiskey world, want a lot of bourbons, whiskeys, whatever it may be, that are higher proof. But I would say definitely if you haven't considered it or you haven't tried it, give the Michter's American Whiskey a try. I think it's something that you'll really enjoy. This is a whiskey that you can have on a nightly basis without having to think too much. The lower proof just allows for it to have that really nice drinkability. So give the American Whiskey from Michter's a try. I don't think you're going to regret it. Coming in at number 2, one of my favorite cask strength wheated bourbons is from Maker's Mark. Again, this is their cask strength wheated bourbon. And again, it's Maker's in its purest form. This is their base. So everything that they work off of is exactly this. Their Maker's cask strength is everything that, again, they work off of to create all of their other bourbons within their lineup. So for me, at that $35, maybe $40 price point, a cask strength wheated bourbon where honestly, there's not a lot of cask strength wheated bourbons really out on the market that are A, affordable, and B, ones that you can just generally go to the store and buy. So I beat the drum of and for Makers quite a bit. It's just something that the cask strength version of this really fits my profile well. I think for a lot of people it will. There are some people that get slightly turned off by Makers, but oftentimes that's just their regular standard Makers offering. If you consider the Makers cask strength something that maybe you should be introducing to your lineup or your daily drinkers, I don't think, again, you're going to go wrong. It's something that you can, generally speaking, find at the liquor store. I still think it's vastly underrated cask strength wheated bourbon that's readily available. Sign me up for that all day long. So this might be the definition of underrated. For me, a high proof bourbon that is, again, for the most part, readily available. A couple years ago, there was a lot of chatter about this thing kind of going away. Well, it never did. It's remained pretty tried and true, available. The vast majority of places that I go, I see a lot of the Old Granddad 114. This is something that Jim Beam just pumps out quite a bit of, and is something that, for whatever reason, in my mind, still becomes a very underrated type of bourbon. I think for the price point at right around that $25, great proof, 114 proof, the profile that it generally has on it, it's a mass-produced product. It's just about everywhere, and it doesn't get much, I'll say, either respect or the attention that I feel that it should. So if the Old Granddad 114 is not something that you've either had or just kind of keep looking past, stop, give it a try. I think you're really going to enjoy it. And I think, again, at that $25 price point for a higher proof bourbon, this really kind of falls for me right in that kind of vastly underrated bourbon kind of category, or is something I try to recommend or suggest because oftentimes when you go to the liquor store, it's on the bottom shelf, and it is not a bottom shelf bourbon. Let me tell you that first and foremost. So again, if it's something that you overlook, which in my opinion, most people do or are, because I have it on this underrated list, definitely give the Old Granddad 114 a try. I don't think you're going to regret it. It's something that I think you're going to introduce to your bourbons that I think you're going to kind of continue to want to have at home at most times. So there you have it, the Old Granddad 114 from Jim Beam. All right, so coming in at number 4 of my underrated bourbons is this bad boy right here, the Remus Straight Bourbon Whiskey. Again, this is an MGP product. This is released under their own brand, of course, the Remus. And again, it's something that I think is vastly underrated. I know it's coming in at like right around that 94 proof, but it's something that retains a lot of that great MGP flavor profile, and is for the most part readily available. I know it doesn't hit maybe necessarily every market, but I've seen a lot more of the Remus out on the shelves in the past kind of year or two. So I think if you just kind of take a look, you might start seeing a few more of these bottles on the shelf. You know, of course, everyone loves most of the time the Remus Repeal that they release basically once a year. But again, stop looking past this. And again, it's why it's on my list of underrated bourbons. You know, I think, again, it's something that I really enjoy, not only from sipping standpoint, but, you know, also being utilized in cocktails. I think it really holds up, you know, both ways, and something that I really enjoy. And oftentimes for anyone who's looking for something maybe a little bit different, I will suggest a bottle of Remus, you know, most days. So there you have it, the Remus Straight Bourbon Whiskey, again, from MGP. Stop looking past it, consider it, try to make this thing less underrated. Now, I'm not even sure if this is a bourbon that should be on this list or not. I think the word is probably out on it. However, when I talk about it, it still seems to be like one of those bourbons that people just don't maybe either give enough credit to, or for whatever reason, for me, kind of allows this bourbon to still remain a little bit underrated. Now, personally, I'm a huge Old Forester fan, love the profile generally of what it is that they put out, you know, so I try to factor some of that stuff in too. And I think overall, I just don't have the words for why I feel that this is still underrated. And maybe it's not. Maybe, again, the word is out and people are enjoying more of this than I think. But again, it's just a bourbon that I don't hear a lot of chatter about very often, and maybe for a good reason. People are probably trying to keep this thing, you know, less talked about, so there's a little bit more of it. But again, for me, it still seems to be a little bit somewhat underrated. Love the profile, again, of this. So if it's something that you haven't tried, definitely give the Old Forester Signature 100 a try. I think this is something that is a fantastic bourbon, great price point, usually right around that maybe $30 price point. And again, I still think it's slightly underrated, but maybe it's not. It's something that just feels that way to me. But again, if it's something that is underrated and you haven't picked up a bottle of the Signature 100, do yourself a favor. I think it's going to be something that you'll truly enjoy. Now, last but definitely not least, and probably the most expensive bottle on this list of underrated bourbons, in my opinion, is the Four Roses Small Batch Select. Again, 2-3 years ago when Four Roses introduced this to the lineup, everyone went crazy about it. And then it seemed like within a very short period of time, any bit of chatter just kind of fell apart. For what reason, I'm not exactly sure. I think of what it is that Four Roses does on a daily basis in terms of their standard lineup. For me, this is probably my favorite of what it is they do. I think it still retains a lot of those, you know, LE limited edition kind of profiles within a bottle that is, I'm going to say, readily available, but one that seems to be never talked about for whatever reason. And for right around that $65 price point, you're getting, to me, one of maybe the best shelf bourbons that are out there on the market today. 104 proof, non-chill filtered, a blend of several different recipes that they have. And for me, what it is that it has to offer is a tremendous value. And again, still for some reason, this is a bourbon that feels a bit underrated just because never seems to get much talk anymore outside of when it was first kind of introduced to the market. So if you've ever been on the fence with the Four Roses Small Batch Select, I'd say get off the fence, buy a bottle. I think you'll truly, truly enjoy it. Now, I also thought about even the Four Roses Single Barrel, which again has become a little bit more difficult to find, and I don't think it's quite as undervalued as the Four Roses Small Batch Select. So in my opinion of what it is they put out, to me, this is the most underrated bourbon that Four Roses puts out today on the market. So again, like I mentioned before, if it's something that you've considered and just haven't decided to buy it for whatever reason, do yourself a favor, buy it, sip on it, take your time with it. I think you'll truly, truly enjoy what it is that the Four Roses Small Batch Select has to offer. Well, there you have it. Here are a few of my vastly underrated bourbons / whiskey that I definitely think you guys need to consider. So for whatever reason, again, these things have remained to me a bit underrated for whatever reason. But for some reason, if one of these or all of them are whiskeys that you've passed on, stop, give them a try. Definitely come back. Let me know your thoughts. If it's something that you have never had before and you try it, I'd love to know your thoughts one way or another. So guys, thank you so much. Greatly appreciate all the support. If you'd like to follow me, you can on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all of those places at My Bourbon Journey. If you'd like to help support the channel and become part of the Mash and Journey Whiskey Club, make sure you check out that link and other links in the description below. A lot of good stuff down there as well. So with that being said, thank you guys so much. And remember, it's about the journey and not the destination. Cheers.
To me, oh, one step, keeping pace, taking our time, Girl, I would